Stefan and Janet, both of you, talk to our audience, the folks who might be listening who are struggling with whether or not to investigate a malpractice case. Because I will tell you that almost every client that I meet with for the first time, they almost always say the same thing. They say some variation of, "I am not the kind of person to sue. I'm not one of those people," is what they say, and I'm not litigious. Almost apologizing for investigating and pressing their rights. Uh, Talk to us, and I'll ask you, Stefan, to go first. A little bit about your thought process um, when these discussions were coming up.
Um, when I thought back about the diagnosis of needing a psychiatrist, that to me was so bad, it was so incorrect that I immediately wanted to fight back. In fact, I'm only sorry that I didn't tell that doctor that he was full of crap. And I'm using kind words. I mean, how
It's a
dare
family
he?
podcast, so thank you.
Yes,
Yes,
yes, please edit that out.
well, full of stool.
Yeah, no, I hear
Um,
you.
yeah, and I was angry, um, and I felt I didn't know then that modifying your home, to accommodate somebody in my physical condition could cost a couple of $100,000
Yeah,
minimally. An elevator alone is 80 grand, $80,000. Build a shaft and hot, buy the cab and all so on. And everything else, all the doorways have to be opened, and even as much as getting a sink that you can get under so you can shave on and brush your teeth on a regular basis. It goes on and on. In fact, we've been house hunting now for a while, and it looks as though $300,000 to $400,000 in modifications almost any house is what we have to undertake. And what
well,
makes it even more frustrating is that I would in the past I would have been the guy that somebody would hire to do the modifications, and I can't even lift a hammer.
yeah, yeah. Janet, talk to us from your perspective, what it was like to make the decision to talk to lawyers, investigate a case, and then eventually press forward and file a lawsuit. What was that process like for you?
Um, I was, I was dealing with so much that I really, as I said, I was not, this was not really forefront on my mind, but, I felt that, that this was, if he was as impacted as he was, and again, like we're probably 3 months in, not really even knowing what's going to happen. I'm still was hopeful that Stefan would make a recovery, but it was something that I felt that he was wronged. I felt that there was something out there that didn't quite seem right. And as we examined the records and looked at some of the things, there was more and more evidence about the lack of care, even from people not doing the neuro checks that they were supposed to do, and um, giving Stefan the care that that he needed. And I would rather, I mean, Stefan is very impaired. He's a fall risk. He falls probably once every 6 weeks. I've got to call 911 to pick him up. He falls, and because of being on blood thinners, there's bruising and there's hematomas that come about. It's just,
Broke a leg.
he broke his hip. He's just, it's just, it's you know, I would much rather, much rather have had my normal life without all of this because, you know, although the money is going to be helpful to help take care of him in the way that he needs to be taken care of and make his life easier. But, you know, that's, as you said, that's not something that I would have done. Wasn't looking for it. Um,
Well, I appreciate you sharing all that, and you've got a unique perspective too on what it's like to be a client in a medical malpractice case. I've had several clients on this podcast before, and I'd like you to sort of give a client's eye view of what litigation feels like when you're the client and you're dealing with lawyers and you're dealing with depositions and the prospect of trial. Would you give us a little bit of your client eye view of that process?
um, I, you know, I felt validated that my thoughts and my concerns were real, and that was very, very good. Um, I'm I always felt that, you know, that our interests, Stefan's interests, were were foremost and at front, and I felt like I, you know, had to advocate for him. I guess, you know, because of what happened that night with the neurologist, I wanted to make sure that whatever he needed and was given to him. Um, there was constant communication back and forth with you and the firm. And anytime something happened, I mean, I felt that you listened, you were there, and I felt that your interests were very genuine, and feel like, you know, almost that there's a friendship, I think, with you guys, you know.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I feel the same way. And thank you for saying that. You know, you get close to people because you share a lot of very personal stuff, and you're also sharing a tough experience. But Stefan, let me ask you, what was the hardest part of this litigation? Just for the context of the listeners, um, the case did resolve ultimately before going to trial. We had a mediation and were able to reach a agreement to get the case resolved. And it's a confidential settlement. We can't disclose the number, but it was a agreement by all parties that it made sense and allowed you all to move on with your life. But for many years, we were together. I think the case lasted 3 years. I don't think we started off together. I believe you started off with a different law firm, and we were introduced, and then eventually we became your counsel and proceeded. But tell me if you would, Stefan, what the hardest part of the litigation was from your perspective.
Well, luckily, I had you to help as a guide and a coach, and you ran interference, and I felt protected, insulated, and helped in a manner that allowed me to navigate this process. Um, I had a motivation. I wanted to get even. I'll be quite honest with you. I felt so badly wronged that I wanted to get even. I could never get even in the biblical sense, but I wanted something, some just compensation. You know, I wanted this doctor to be shown that you're wrong. You know, please don't ever do this again to anybody else. But you made the process doable, and I personally would have gone through hell and high water anyway. You know, to see the case through. I was willing to go because I'm living the life of a damaged person. So how much worse can it be?
No, I would like to say that I think the most difficult part going through the depositions and sitting here at the kitchen table and hearing that, and I would get very nervous, even though it was all over. But reliving and hearing what had happened and hearing the facts is difficult because it's like you're reliving it again and again. But as I said, it validates what you think, what you realize had happened, and so it's an interesting process to see how the legal system works. It definitely is very interesting, and you get to know the and see the true side. As you had said, the neurologist was a bit arrogant, and even in its deposition was arrogant as well.
Well, you mentioned depositions, and yeah, that's typically one of the more challenging hurdles that clients go through because you're put under oath and cross-examined by very talented defense lawyers, very experienced defense lawyers. Tell us what it's like to sit there as a client in in this situation, and be questioned in a deposition.
I will tell you that I practice meditation and
Sure.
some like I before that happened. As I said, I was very nervous, so I was practicing, breathing and trying to get myself in a great frame of mind because I was worried about what would happen. Although you guys, we practiced. We practiced a couple of times about what kinds of questions I should expect. But when it came to it, I did feel prepared, and I took the laptop in our basement away from where Stefan was so I could speak freely without hurting his feelings and him hearing. I
Because
took a pic.
This was a Zoom deposition.
This is,
So
yes,
you
this was all during COVID. So this was a
Right.
Zoom deposition.
Yeah.
I took a candle to help calm myself as well, lit a candle, took a picture, a family picture of my mom, and kept looking at my mom during that whole deposition. And I could hear my mother say, "Good job, good job." So was it nerve-wracking? Yes, but it was something I had to go through, and you can do it. You're not hung out to dry and unprepared. You know, to any future clients, you can do it. You can
So
do it.
and thank you for sharing that. And Stefan, tell me your approach. Did you try meditation and light a candle, or did you have a different approach?
Oh, I could jokingly say I had a drink or two, but it, I didn't. I felt that I was wronged. I would just tell the truth,
Yeah.
and there was nothing. There was nothing that their lawyers could ask me or trip me up on because everything I said was on record. The medical records backed up whatever I had to say. Um, and I'm going to expose a little bit of my own ego, which I still have some left, that those guys are no smarter than I am. They're not any more educated than I am. And, I still, thank God, I can still think. And so I didn't feel intimidated because if I did, you coached me in the ways to answer questions, which would be effective. And that made the process straightforward and expected.
Yeah, y'all have both touched on this point about that you were prepared, and we had spent a good deal of time with you ahead of time, and the preparation is so important. I would not maybe use the word coached. That's got a negative connotation, but go over the testimony and make sure you're comfortable with being questioned, because it's a very alien experience for most people. It's a strange thing to be put under oath, sit across the table or through a computer and be asked questions about personal questions about how your body works and your relationship with your spouse. I mean, it's
Mhm.
not, most people don't talk about those things easily. So, and y'all were great. One of the big challenges in preparing clients for depots is to assure them that the case does not sit on their shoulders. I mean, so many folks are thinking, "Oh my gosh, if I say the wrong thing, I'm going to ruin my husband or my wife's case." And we spend a lot of time trying to lessen that burden. I mean, your only job is to tell the truth, but that you want to tell it with confidence, and not because there's a lot of there are a lot of little tricks that defense lawyers may use to try to get you to say things that might not be fully accurate. I mean, how there's a process, but y'all were both great, and I think that was clear from how the defense reacted to your testimony after it was over. We're coming to the conclusion, and I want to just wrap up with asking each of you to sort of, if you could talk to people out there in the in podcast world who might be listening to this, who either personally or a family member or somebody they care about is thinking about going down the road of investigating for a medical malpractice case and considering going forward. You've been there, you've both been there. Speak to that listener about, how they should approach it or how they might consider approaching it.
I would say your primary goal is to be supportive and make sure that your loved one is taken care of, and like I said, if getting the litigation was not initially my primary goal. My primary goal was to make sure that Stefan was on his way to recovery.
Mhm.
And then I reached out and tell your story, tell what happened. Don't be afraid. If you have a case, your attorney will tell you that you have a case, and it's not up to you to decide that. And this is something like, if there is going to be this permanent damage and permanent disability with your partner, why have this additional struggle? If something can help make your life a little bit easier, then you owe it to your partner to help advocate for them. And so I would encourage somebody who is out there, if you're struggling and you think that something wasn't right, speak to an attorney and see whether or not you in fact have a malpractice case.
Thanks, Janet. How about you, Stefan?
Well, I always think back, I forget who said it, but you have nothing to fear but fear itself. You're already in a bad situation. If there is a possibility that it is medical malpractice that allowed you to arrive at the condition that you now have, then ask a doctor for medical help. Ask a lawyer to look at the doctor's observations of your medical health. And if there is, in fact, malpractice, then allow the lawyer, Lloyd, hopefully, that,
Thank you.
and I mean that, whoever's listening, ask Lloyd if this is, in fact, something that should be pursued. And, one thing is sitting home in a rocking chair watching the leaves turn in the fall, as compared to being able to get up out of the chair and saying, I got to break those leaves up. Um, so I always think in terms of practical, that give it a shot, give it a shot, and don't let the opportunity to make your life somewhat better go by the wayside.
Well, Janet and Stefan, I want to just thank you both so much for taking time to be on the podcast today. I started this podcast a few years ago to give me an opportunity to invite folks like you to come on and hopefully help educate the public to avoid these situations. Because I think Janet touched on this at the very beginning. The best thing you can do is to be an advocate and not accept anything that a healthcare professional tells you at face value, particularly when there's life and death at stake. We have Google, we have Wikipedia, we have resources to learn. You got to be an advocate for yourself. Your loved ones got to stick up for each other. And the goal of all of this this podcast and frankly my law practice is to try and reduce medical malpractice. Put me out of business eventually, because get the healthcare system operating at the level that it needs to protect patients and not to allow good folks like y'all fall through the cracks. So I hope that you've reached some folks out there. I hope we have, and I just can't thank you enough for being on my podcast, and look forward to talking with you soon. So thank you
Thank
very
you.
much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.